Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, our path doesn't lead outward to the stars, but inward, into the intricate landscape of the human brain. This small, soft organ, weighing little more than a grapefruit, holds more connections than all the stars scattered across the Milky Way. Inside it, thought sparks, memories ripple, and every emotion you've ever felt is written into living tissue. Neuroscience is our way of peering into this hidden cosmos. It shows us that each new skill or idea reshapes the brain itself. That recalling a memory subtly changes it, like a painter adding fresh strokes to a canvas. And that even in your deepest sleep, the brain is at work, cleansing, restoring, and weaving the quiet worlds of dreams. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, consider liking and subscribing, or share a thought in the comments. It helps others drift here too, one sleepy mind at a time. But for now, there's nothing you need to do. Let your breathing grow calm, let your shoulders soften, and let the intricate mystery of the mind unfold like a starry sky within. If you're ready, let's begin. Your brain contains more connections than there are stars in the galaxy. The night sky holds hundreds of billions of stars, and yet within the 3 pounds of tissue inside your skull lies an even grander cosmos. Your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, each branching into thousands of connections. These links, called synapses, number in the trillions. Estimates reach as high as 100 trillion. Every one of those synapses is a tiny junction where signals can leap from one cell to another, shaping the flow of thought, memory, and emotion. When you try to imagine a loved one's face or listen to a piece of music, it is not a single neuron at work, but a vast constellation of them, firing in harmony. In this sense, you carry a galaxy inside you, a private universe of flickering lights, more complex than the Milky Way and as ever-changing as the stars themselves. Neurons communicate using tiny electrical sparks. Every sensation you experience, every thought that crosses your mind, depends on a language of electricity and chemistry. Neurons, the brain's primary cells, talk to each other using action potentials, bursts of voltage that ripple down their long, cable-like arms. These signals reach the synapse, the narrow gap where two cells nearly touch. There, the electrical spark transforms into chemistry. Molecules called neurotransmitters spill out into the space and bind to receptors on the next cell, triggering it to fire. This dance happens on a microscopic scale. Yet across billions of cells, it creates perception, memory, and even your sense of self. The sound of a bird at dawn, the taste of tea, the memory of a childhood friend. All of it is built from sparks leaping through the silent forest of neurons, faster and more faithfully than any man-made machine could ever manage. A single thought can travel faster than a race car. When you decide to move your hand, the signal must travel from your brain's motor cortex down your spinal cord and into your muscles. That signal is an electrical impulse racing along axons, the long fibers of neurons. In some pathways, these impulses move at more than 200 miles per hour, faster than a Formula One car on its track. This astonishing speed comes from myelin, a fatty sheath that insulates the axon. Myelin forces the signal to leap forward in quick jumps, a process called saltatory conduction, making transmission vastly more efficient. Without it, thought would crawl. With it, your reflexes are swift, your speech flows in real time, and your body seems to answer your will without delay. A single decision, made in an instant, is carried by signals traveling faster than anything you could drive. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy. Despite weighing only about 3 pounds, your brain is ravenous. It consumes roughly 1/5 of all the calories your body burns, even when you're resting quietly. Neurons are costly to maintain. Each action potential, each chemical release, demands energy in the form of glucose and oxygen. Billions of tiny molecular pumps work non-stop, restoring balance after every spark of activity. This is why mental exhaustion feels real. Though your muscles may be still, your brain is burning fuel at a furious pace. Evolution has concentrated such vast energy in the head because the rewards, planning, language, imagination, outweighed the costs. The brain's appetite is so great that during starvation, the body shifts its entire metabolism to keep it fed. Every idea you've ever had, every dream, every plan for tomorrow has been powered by this constant energy-hungry fire. The human brain keeps developing well into your 20s. For decades, scientists believed that brain development ended in childhood. But modern imaging has revealed a subtler truth. The human brain is still under construction through adolescence and into the mid-20s. During this period, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, self-control, and decision-making, continues to mature. At the same time, the brain prunes away unused synapses, sculpting itself into leaner, more efficient circuits. This remodeling explains why teenagers often show impulsivity and risk-taking. The emotional centers of the brain are fully active, but the control systems are still catching up. Far from being static, the brain is a living sculpture, shaped by both biology and experience well into adulthood. By the time the pruning and strengthening settle, each brain carries the unique signature of the path it has traveled. Memories are not stored in one place, but spread across vast networks. When you remember your childhood bedroom, your brain does not retrieve a single file from a cabinet. Instead, fragments of that experience are scattered across many regions. The smell of the wooden floorboards might live in the olfactory cortex. The color of the curtains is held in the visual areas. The echo of laughter is stored in auditory pathways. Even the feeling of safety is encoded in emotional circuits. To recall the room, your brain must weave these fragments together, reassembling them into a coherent whole. This distributed storage makes memory resilient. If one region is damaged, other traces may remain. But it also explains why memories can be incomplete or distorted. You are not replaying a recording, you are reconstructing a mosaic, pulling together sensations, emotions, and details from a network that spans the brain's landscape. Every time you recall a memory, you change it slightly. Memory is not fixed. Each act of remembering softens the edges, making the memory pliable again. While it is active, new emotions, current thoughts, or external suggestions can subtly reshape it. When the memory is stored once more, it carries these new traces, like a clay figure returned to the kiln with fresh impressions added. Over time, the story you tell yourself about an event may drift from what actually happened. Two people recalling the same shared experience may describe it in strikingly different ways, not because either is lying, but because memory is alive. This shifting nature of recall means that your past is not a static archive, but a living narrative, rewritten across the years by the present moment. In a sense, every memory is both history and imagination, woven together. Your brain rewires itself every time you learn something new. Learning is not just acquiring knowledge, it is physically reshaping your brain. Each new skill or experience sparks the growth of synapses, strengthens connections, and sometimes prunes others away. A beginner pianist, fumbling over scales, is laying down fresh pathways that grow smoother with practice. A traveler learning a new language is weaving fresh circuits in auditory and memory regions. Even something as simple as remembering a new route to work alters your neural landscape. This ability to adapt is called neuroplasticity, and it continues throughout life. It is why stroke patients can sometimes recover lost functions as other areas take over the work. It is why continued learning can keep minds sharp into old age. Your brain is never finished. It is always under construction, a living sculpture shaped by experience, rewired with each passing day. Sleep is when the brain cleans itself of toxins. At night, when you sink into deep sleep, your brain begins its housekeeping. During waking hours, neurons work tirelessly, producing metabolic waste. Left unchecked, these byproducts build up, clouding thinking and impairing memory. But during sleep, the glymphatic system, a network of channels surrounding the brain, flushes cerebrospinal fluid through the tissue. This wash carries away toxins, including proteins linked to Alzheimer's disease. The process is like a nightly river flowing through the brain, cleansing and restoring. Without it, waste accumulates and cognition falters. This is one reason even a single night of poor sleep leaves you foggy. Sleep is not a pause from life, but an essential act of repair, a time when the brain restores itself so it can face another day. To sleep is to allow the mind to quietly scrub itself clean. Dreams may be your brain rehearsing future possibilities. Why do we dream? One idea is that dreams are simulations, trial runs for survival. In dreams, you might face threats, navigate strange landscapes, or solve puzzles, as if your brain were testing strategies for real life. Another idea is that dreams weave memories together, placing today's events alongside fragments of the past, shaping them into a broader narrative. This could help you integrate new experiences into the ongoing story of who you are. Some researchers even suggest dreams spark creativity by linking ideas that rarely meet during waking life. Whatever their precise role, dreams show us that the brain never rests from imagining. Even in the stillness of night, your mind creates vivid worlds, rehearsals, stories, and experiments spun from your deepest networks of thought. They are proof that imagination is ceaseless, a fire that glows even in darkness. There are more glial cells than neurons in your brain. When people picture the brain, they often imagine neurons, the star-shaped cells that fire with tiny sparks. But neurons are only part of the story. For every neuron, there are many glial cells, outnumbering them several times over. For decades, glia were dismissed as mere support, the scaffolding that held the brain together. Now we know they are essential players. Some form myelin, the insulation that allows signals to travel faster. Others guide newborn neurons to their destinations, clear away debris, or regulate the flow of chemicals around synapses. Astrocytes, named for their star-like shape, even help control blood flow to busy regions, ensuring neurons receive enough fuel. Far from passive, glial cells are active partners in thought, learning, and memory. If neurons are the actors, glia are the directors, stagehands, and producers, making sure the play of consciousness can unfold night and day. Some neurons can be over 1 meter long. Neurons come in many shapes, from tiny, branching cells in the brain's cortex to massive, cable-like structures stretching the length of your body. Some of the longest start in the spinal cord and travel down to your toes. These single cells can be over 1 meter long, linking the distant regions of brain and body with seamless precision. They are living wires, carrying signals from your motor cortex to your muscles, or sensations from your skin back to the spinal cord. To fire, they rely on myelin insulation, allowing impulses to leap along at extraordinary speeds. Imagine one continuous strand of life, stretching nearly the height of a human, carrying sparks in thousandths of a second. These giant neurons remind us that the brain does not stop at the skull. Its reach extends through the body, a vast living network of threads that connect mind and movement. The hippocampus is shaped like a seahorse. Nestled deep within the temporal lobe is a small, curved structure called the hippocampus. Its name comes from the Greek for seahorse, because its shape curls and bends like the body of that tiny sea creature. Despite its modest size, it is one of the brain's most essential structures. The hippocampus acts as the gateway to memory. Without it, you could not form new recollections of daily life. The past might remain intact, but new experiences would slip away almost as soon as they occurred. This is what happened to patient HM, who lost both hippocampi during surgery and could no longer create fresh memories. The hippocampus also plays a role in navigation, helping you build mental maps of places you know. Every memory of a street, a room, or a face passes through this seahorse-shaped organ, swimming silently at the heart of your brain's ocean of thought. Your brain waves shift depending on whether you are awake or asleep. The brain is never silent. Even at rest, electrical activity sweeps across its surface in rhythmic patterns called brain waves. These oscillations shift depending on your state. When alert and focused, your brain hums with fast, small beta waves. When you close your eyes and relax, slower alpha waves ripple through. As you drift into deep sleep, the rhythms slow further into delta waves, great rolling tides that mark the body's most restorative rest. In REM sleep, when dreams bloom, the patterns become jagged and rapid again, resembling wakefulness. Brainwaves are not background noise, but coordination signals, synchronizing networks so that regions of the brain can communicate. They are the tides of consciousness, changing temper as you move from focus to rest, from dream to waking life. In their rhythms lies the hidden music of the mind. Synapses can strengthen or weaken within minutes. Every moment you learn something new, your brain changes. The connections between neurons, synapses, are not static bridges. They grow stronger or weaker depending on use. If two neurons fire together repeatedly, the synapse between them becomes more efficient, a process called long-term potentiation. If a connection lies unused, it can weaken, a process known as depression. These adjustments can happen within minutes, shaping circuits in real time. It is why practice reinforces skill and why disuse leads to forgetting. Synaptic change is the biological foundation of memory, habit, and learning. In this way, the brain is not a fixed machine, but a living network, rewiring itself from moment to moment. Each choice you make, each thought you return to, leaves behind a physical trace, a strengthening or fading of connections in the endless latticework of your mind. Pain is created by the brain, not felt directly by the body. When you stub your toe, it seems obvious that the pain lives in the foot. But the raw signals traveling from your skin to your spinal cord are only alarms. The brain must interpret them, and it is the brain that creates the experience of pain. This is why amputees can feel aching or burning in a missing limb. The signals no longer exist, but the brain continues to produce sensation. Pain is not a direct reflection of damage, but a protective story the brain tells you, designed to keep you safe. Sometimes it exaggerates. Sometimes it persists long after injury has healed. Pain is real, but it is generated within, woven from perception and expectation. In this way, pain is as much an experience of the mind as it is of the body, a reminder of how deeply the two are bound together. Placebos can change real brain chemistry. Belief alone has the power to alter biology. When patients are given a sugar pill but told it is medicine, they often experience genuine relief. Brain imaging shows why. The expectation of healing triggers real changes. Endorphins, the brain's natural painkillers, are released. Dopamine surges, lifting mood. In some cases, even the immune system responds. Placebo effects demonstrate how tightly mind and body are interwoven. The key is not deception, but expectation. The belief that help is coming sets healing into motion. This is why clinical trials must compare drugs against placebos. The brain's own pharmacy is powerful enough to confound results. Placebos do not cure everything, but they reveal a profound truth: that belief, trust, and perception can write themselves into our very chemistry, creating measurable changes in how we feel and function. Music activates nearly every region of the brain. Few experiences engage the brain as widely as music. When you listen to a song, rhythm entrains motor circuits, urging you to tap your foot. Melody flows through auditory pathways, while lyrics activate language centers. Emotional circuits flare, making your chest ache or swell. Memories spark as old songs transport you back in time. Even the prefrontal cortex engages, analyzing harmonies and predicting the next note. Neuroscientists sometimes say that music is a whole-brain workout, activating regions scattered across the cortex and deeper structures. This may be why music feels so powerful. It binds together movement, feeling, and thought in a single flow. A favorite song can touch nearly every corner of the mind, turning electrical sparks into the profound experience of beauty, nostalgia, or joy. Laughter releases a wave of feel-good chemicals. A genuine laugh is one of the brain's simplest joys, yet it triggers a profound cascade of chemistry. When you laugh, your brain releases endorphins, the body's natural opioids, easing pain and creating a sense of warmth. Dopamine floods the reward system, sparking pleasure. Serotonin rises, smoothing mood and lowering stress. At the same time, cortisol, the stress hormone, drops. This chemical cocktail explains why laughter feels cleansing, like a sudden lightness spreading through the body. It is also social. Mirror neurons make laughter contagious, urging others to join in. Evolution may have favored laughter because it binds groups, creating trust and resilience. A laugh is more than sound, it is biology, flowing through your brain in waves of chemistry designed to heal, connect, and soothe. The brain's reward system evolved to encourage survival. Buried deep in the midbrain lies the mesolimbic pathway, a circuit that fires when you experience pleasure or anticipate reward. It floods the brain with dopamine when you eat, explore, succeed, or connect with others. This system evolved as a survival mechanism, pushing our ancestors to seek food, form bonds, and reproduce. But in modern life, the same circuit can be hijacked by addictive substances or behaviors, chasing dopamine in unhealthy ways. The reward system is not about simple enjoyment, it is about reinforcement. It teaches you what to repeat, what to pursue, and what to avoid. Each surge of pleasure is a signal that says, "This mattered." The reward system is a compass, evolved to keep us alive, yet powerful enough to shape every habit, ambition, and craving that moves us through the world. Mirror neurons allow you to feel what others feel. In the early 1990s, researchers studying monkeys noticed something strange. Certain neurons in the motor cortex fired not only when the monkey performed an action, but also when it watched another monkey do the same thing. These were dubbed mirror neurons. In humans, similar systems allow us to experience a shadow of what others feel. When you see someone smile, your own mirror neurons echo the pattern, nudging you toward joy. When you see a friend stub their toe, you flinch because your brain simulates the pain. This neural mirroring forms part of the basis for empathy, teaching, and even culture. It allows us to learn by observation and to share emotional states. In a very real sense, mirror neurons blur the line between self and other, weaving invisible threads that tie your inner world to those around you. Your brain predicts the future before you act. The brain is not a passive receiver of information. It is a prediction machine, constantly guessing what will happen next. Neuroscientists call this predictive coding. When you reach for a cup, your brain has already simulated the movement, predicting the weight, the feel, and the outcome before your hand makes contact. Even perception is predictive. The brain anticipates what your eyes will see a moment later and fills in gaps if information is missing. This is why optical illusions can trick you. Your brain's prediction overrides raw data. By forecasting the near future, the brain allows you to move smoothly through the world, saving precious milliseconds. Every action, thought, or sensation is shaped not just by the present, but by your brain's ceaseless rehearsal of the next moment waiting to arrive. Decisions often happen before you are conscious of them. When you decide to press a button or lift your hand, it feels as though your conscious mind is in control. But experiments suggest otherwise. In the 1980 years, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet found that electrical activity in the brain, a readiness potential, appeared hundreds of milliseconds before subjects reported making a decision. This implies that the brain begins preparing an action before you are aware of choosing it. Later studies have even predicted decisions seconds before they reach conscious awareness. What this means for free will is debated, but it reveals that consciousness may be the final storyteller rather than the initial spark. Your brain prepares, your body moves, and then your awareness catches up, weaving the action into your personal narrative of choice. The prefrontal cortex is your executive brain. Sitting just behind your forehead is the prefrontal cortex, a region that acts as the executive of the mind. It handles planning, decision-making, impulse control, and long-term goals. This is the part of your brain that weighs risks, resists temptations, and imagines possible futures. Damage here can lead to reckless behavior, poor judgment, and difficulty controlling emotions, as seen in the famous case of Phineas Gage, who survived a railroad accident that destroyed much of his prefrontal cortex. Without this region, instincts and emotions run unchecked. With it, humans develop the ability to delay gratification, build civilizations, and imagine futures far beyond the present. The prefrontal cortex is your brain's boardroom, the place where countless inputs converge to guide the story of your life. Habits are etched deep into neural loops. Much of daily life runs on autopilot. This is because repeated actions are encoded into loops involving the basal ganglia, a cluster of deep brain structures. When you first learn a habit, tying your shoes, driving a car, the prefrontal cortex is heavily involved. But with repetition, control shifts deeper, and the habit runs automatically. This frees up mental energy for new challenges, but also makes habits hard to break. Cues in the environment trigger the loop, the routine unfolds, and a reward cements the cycle. This architecture explains why habits feel so deeply ingrained. They are written not just in behavior, but in neural circuitry, carved like grooves in stone. To change a habit requires carving a new groove, replacing old patterns with fresh ones until they too become automatic. The amygdala can hijack your emotions in an instant. Deep within the temporal lobes lie two almond-shaped clusters called the amygdalae. They are ancient, primal centers of emotion, especially fear. When danger looms, the amygdala can trigger a rapid response before your rational brain has time to process. This amygdala hijack is why you might jump at a shadow before realizing it's harmless. The amygdala routes signals to the hypothalamus and brainstem, releasing stress hormones, quickening your pulse, and sharpening your senses. It is a survival system, honed over millions of years. Yet in modern life, it can misfire, reacting with panic to harmless stressors, fueling anxiety or anger. The amygdala is both protector and troublemaker, a guardian that ensures survival, but sometimes at the cost of peace. Stress reshapes brain architecture over time. Short bursts of stress sharpen the senses and prepare the body for action. But chronic stress leaves a deeper mark. Prolonged exposure to stress hormones like cortisol can shrink the hippocampus, impairing memory, while strengthening circuits in the amygdala that amplify fear. The prefrontal cortex, which governs planning and self-control, can also be weakened, making decisions harder. Stress literally rewires the balance of the brain, tilting it toward vigilance and away from calm reasoning. This reshaping helps explain why chronic stress is linked to anxiety, depression, and cognitive decline. Yet the brain is not helpless. Practices like mindfulness, exercise, and rest can restore balance, regrowing connections and calming the overactive circuits stress leaves behind. Meditation can thicken parts of the cortex. For centuries, meditation was practiced as a spiritual discipline. Neuroscience now shows it reshapes the brain itself. Long-term meditators often display thicker cortical regions involved in attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. Even beginners show changes after just a few weeks of practice. Scans reveal increased connectivity in networks that govern focus, while activity in the amygdala, the stress center, decreases. Meditation appears to strengthen the brain's ability to manage distraction and regulate emotion, building resilience against stress. These changes are physical, visible under MRI. Sitting quietly, focusing on the breath, may seem passive, but it sculpts the brain like exercise sculpts the body. Each moment of mindfulness is another repetition, another weight lifted by the muscles of awareness. Trauma can be passed down through epigenetics. Experiences leave marks not only in memory, but also in biology. Studies suggest that trauma can alter chemical tags on DNA, changing how genes are expressed without altering the genes themselves. These epigenetic changes can be passed to offspring. In animals, stress in one generation can lead to heightened fear responses in the next. In humans, descendants of trauma survivors, from famine victims to Holocaust survivors, sometimes show altered stress hormone profiles. It is as if the echo of past suffering is carried forward in biology, priming descendants for vigilance. While much remains to be learned, epigenetics shows that experience can ripple across generations, carried not just in stories, but in molecular whispers layered onto DNA. Neuroplasticity means the brain is never truly fixed. For much of the 20th century, scientists believed the adult brain was largely static, fixed in form once development ended. But research has overturned this view. The brain is plastic, constantly reshaping itself in response to learning, injury, and experience. New neurons are born in certain regions, and synapses rewire throughout life. Stroke patients can regain lost functions as other areas take over. Musicians show enlarged areas of the cortex tied to movement and hearing. Taxi drivers navigating London's tangled streets have unusually large hippocampi. The brain is not a rigid machine, but a dynamic living organ, one that adapts, heals, and transforms across the years. Neuroplasticity is the reason growth never truly ends, and why every new experience leaves a physical mark on the map of your mind. The cerebellum contains most of your neurons. At the back of your brain, tucked beneath the larger cerebral hemispheres, sits the cerebellum, a structure whose name means little brain. Despite its modest size, it contains the majority of your neurons. Packed into its dense folds are around 60 to 70 billion of them, more than the rest of the brain combined. The cerebellum is best known for coordinating movement, ensuring that each gesture, step, and balance adjustment is smooth. But research shows it also contributes to thought and emotion, fine-tuning mental processes the way it refines physical ones. Its dense wiring acts like an internal metronome, keeping actions and perceptions fluid. Without the cerebellum, movements become clumsy, speech slurs, and balance falters. With it, your every action is shaped into harmony. This tiny little brain is proof that size alone doesn't measure importance. Some of the densest neural universes are folded into its hidden valleys. Your brain generates rhythmic patterns like music. Neural activity is not random chaos. Across the cortex, waves of electrical firing form rhythms, synchronized pulses that resemble the beats of music. Some rhythms are slow, like the deep, rolling delta waves of sleep. Others are quick and sharp, like the gamma oscillations linked to perception and focus. These rhythms allow far-flung regions of the brain to coordinate, like musicians in an orchestra following the same tempo. When rhythms fall out of sync, cognition can falter, as seen in epilepsy, where runaway electrical storms disrupt harmony. Brain rhythms are so patterned that researchers can often tell whether someone is sleeping, dreaming, or concentrating simply by looking at their oscillations. In this way, the brain is both composer and performer, generating the inner soundtrack that keeps thought, perception, and action aligned in time. Hallucinations reveal how the brain constructs reality. When someone hallucinates, they may hear voices or see images that aren't really there. To the brain, however, these experiences feel vivid and real. Hallucinations reveal a hidden truth. Perception is not a direct recording of the outside world, but a construction built by the mind. Normally, sensory data and predictive models align, producing a seamless reality. But when the balance tips, through illness, drugs, or sensory deprivation, the brain's expectations can override input, producing sights or sounds from within. Even in healthy people, similar effects occur. Think of hearing your phone vibrate when it didn't, or seeing faces in clouds. Hallucinations are extreme versions of a process always at work. The brain actively invents the world, stitching together fragments into a coherent whole. What you perceive is not raw reality, but the mind's best guess at truth. Optical illusions show your brain's shortcuts. When you look at an illusion, lines that appear bent, colors that shift, shapes that seem to move, you're not being tricked by your eyes, but by your brain. Optical illusions expose the shortcuts your brain uses to interpret a noisy, ambiguous world. It guesses at depth from shadows, fills in gaps in missing lines, and predicts motion before it happens. Most of the time, these shortcuts serve you well, allowing fast, efficient perception. But illusions reveal their imperfections, pulling back the curtain on the mind's inner strategies. They remind us that what we see is not a raw reflection of reality, but a simulation crafted by neural algorithms. In daily life, these shortcuts keep you safe and quick. In illusions, they leave you marveling at the creativity and fallibility of the brain's construction of sight. Colors don't exist outside the brain. To us, the world seems painted in vivid hues, blue skies, green leaves, red apples. But outside the brain, color doesn't exist. Objects reflect light at different wavelengths, but the sensation of red or blue arises only when the brain interprets those wavelengths. Photoreceptor cells in the retina detect the light, pass signals along, and the brain constructs the perception of color. This means that color is not a property of the world, but a property of perception. Different animals perceive different color ranges. Bees see ultraviolet patterns invisible to us, while some birds see far beyond human limits. Even humans differ, with variations in cone cells shaping unique experiences of color. In a way, the world is colorless until the brain paints it in, a reminder that our reality is, at least partly, a creation within. Your sense of self arises from distributed networks. The feeling of I, of being a single, continuous self, does not come from one brain region. Instead, it emerges from the interaction of many networks. The insula contributes to awareness of the body. The medial prefrontal cortex handles self-related thoughts. The parietal lobes help define boundaries between self and world. Together, they weave the fabric of identity. Damage to these regions can produce striking changes. People may feel detached from their body, lose a sense of ownership over their actions, or experience fragmented identities. This shows how fragile and constructed the self really is. What feels like a unified core is in fact a conversation among circuits, always ongoing. The self is less a single voice than a choir, coordinated so seamlessly that you rarely notice the complexity behind the illusion of May. The default mode network activates when you daydream. When the brain is at rest, something surprising happens. It doesn't go quiet. Instead, a set of regions called the default mode network becomes active. This network, spanning the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate, and angular gyrus, lights up when you are not focused on the outside world. It is involved in self-reflection, daydreaming, recalling memories, and imagining the future. When your mind drifts during a long walk or while staring out a window, this network is humming. It stitches together past and future, constructing the inner narrative that makes up your sense of self. Interestingly, disruptions in the default mode network have been linked to disorders like depression and Alzheimer's. Far from being wasted time, daydreaming may be one of the brain's most important modes, a rehearsal space where your inner life is woven together. Creativity sparks when networks collide unexpectedly. Creative thought is not housed in one place, but arises when different networks of the brain interact. The default mode network generates spontaneous ideas, while the executive control network evaluates and shapes them. The salience network acts as a switchboard, deciding which thoughts are worth pursuing. When these systems collide in unexpected ways, creativity blooms, a flash of insight, a novel solution, a melody out of nowhere. Studies show that creative people often display unusual connectivity between distant regions, allowing ideas to leap across boundaries. Even moments of rest can prime creativity, as unfocused thought allows disparate concepts to combine. A painting, a poem, or a new invention is not the work of a single circuit, but of the whole brain, weaving together fragments into something that has never existed before. The brain is constantly filtering out noise. Every second, your senses bombard the brain with far more information than it can handle. To survive, the brain filters relentlessly. Most background sounds fade away, peripheral sights blur, and countless sensations never reach awareness. This filtering happens in the thalamus, the cortex, and even at the level of sensory organs. Without it, you would be overwhelmed, paralyzed by detail. Yet the filtering is flexible. A mother can sleep through traffic noise but wake instantly at a baby's cry. Soldiers on patrol may hear faint sounds others would miss. The brain is a spotlight operator, dimming distractions so that focus can shine where it matters. What you perceive is not the full flood of reality, but a carefully curated stream, selected to help you navigate, survive, and find meaning in the world. Attention is like a spotlight that can only shine in one place. Although it feels as if you can take in everything at once, attention is limited. Neuroscientists compare it to a spotlight. It can brighten one region of the mental stage, but leaves others in shadow. This focus allows detail and clarity, but at the cost of blindness to what lies outside the beam. Experiments show that when you concentrate on one task, you may miss obvious changes elsewhere, even a person in a gorilla suit walking through a scene. Attention can shift quickly, but it cannot be everywhere at once. This narrow spotlight is both strength and weakness. It lets you read a page, follow a voice, or watch a star. But it also means reality is always larger than what you notice, with vast portions of the world slipping silently past the edges of awareness. Your brain never fully shuts off, even in deep sleep. Sleep feels like surrender, a plunge into nothingness, but your brain never truly switches off. Even in the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, networks hum with slow, synchronized waves. The brainstem regulates breathing and heart rate. The auditory cortex still listens faintly, ready to alert you to danger. In fact, some regions remain surprisingly active, monitoring the environment for important sounds, a crying baby, footsteps nearby. This light vigilance explains why sudden noises can rouse you so quickly, even from the deepest slumber. Far from a shutdown, sleep is a shift into different states of activity, each with its own purpose. The brain's ceaseless work is why waking feels like rejoining a world that never stopped moving. Even at rest, your mind continues its silent vigil, standing guard while you drift through the dark. The brain creates internal movies during REM sleep. In REM sleep, when your eyes flicker beneath closed lids, your brain creates vivid experiences, dreams that unfold like private films. Neural activity during REM mirrors that of wakefulness. Visual areas light up, emotional circuits flare, and the brain stitches together scenes with astonishing realism. It is as though the mind is running its own cinema, projecting images onto the canvas of memory. Muscles are paralyzed during this stage, preventing you from acting out the dream. Yet inside, the story feels alive. You fly, stumble, speak with long-lost friends, or wander through impossible cities. REM dreams can be strange or terrifying, joyful or absurd. They show the brain's creative machinery at full power, generating worlds without sensory input. In this nightly theater, the mind proves itself a master storyteller, weaving its own movies while the body lies still. Sleep deprivation can mimic mental illness. A single night without sleep clouds attention, but prolonged deprivation goes much further. After days of lost rest, the brain begins to misfire. Concentration collapses, mood swings intensify, and hallucinations may appear. In this fragile state, the brain resembles conditions seen in psychiatric illness, anxiety, depression, even psychosis. The reason lies in disrupted brain chemistry. Sleep loss throws off neurotransmitter balance, weakens the prefrontal cortex's control, and hyperactivates the amygdala. It leaves emotion unchecked, memory faltering, and perception unstable. Modern life often undervalues sleep, but neuroscience shows it is as vital as food and water. Without it, the architecture of the mind crumbles. Sleep deprivation is not simply fatigue, it is a temporary unraveling of sanity, a glimpse of how delicately balanced the waking brain must be. Lucid dreaming lets you take control of your dream world. In rare moments, you may realize that you are dreaming while the dream is still unfolding. This state, called lucid dreaming, allows awareness to bloom inside the dream world. Lucid dreamers can sometimes shape the narrative, flying at will, shifting scenery, or facing fears in safe rehearsal. Neuroscientists find that lucid dreaming activates parts of the prefrontal cortex, usually quiet during REM, blending self-awareness with the immersive power of dreaming. Some people train to induce lucidity through reality checks or mindfulness before sleep. To become conscious within a dream is like waking up inside imagination itself, exploring landscapes built by your own mind. Though fleeting, lucid dreams hint at the extraordinary flexibility of consciousness, a reminder that even asleep, awareness can bend and twist in ways waking life rarely allows. Nightmares may train the brain to handle threats. Though unpleasant, nightmares may serve a hidden purpose. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that they are rehearsals for danger. By confronting fear in dreams, a predator, a chase, a fall, the brain practices responses in a safe environment. This threat simulation theory explains why many nightmares feature survival challenges. Nightmares also heighten emotional processing, giving the brain a chance to work through trauma or stress. Children experience nightmares more often, perhaps because their brains are still building strategies for coping with the world. While terrifying in the moment, nightmares may strengthen resilience, like mental sparring matches against imagined dangers. In this view, even the most unsettling dreams are tools, training grounds where the mind learns to face fear and adapt, so that waking life feels a little less overwhelming. The brain has its own clock for circadian rhythms. Tucked deep in the hypothalamus lies the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny cluster of about 20,000 neurons that act as the brain's master clock. This cluster keeps time through circadian rhythms, roughly 24-hour cycles that regulate sleep, hunger, hormone release, and alertness. The clock is synchronized by light, with signals from the eyes resetting it each morning. When sunlight strikes the retina, it tells the brain to suppress melatonin and wake up. At night, darkness triggers its release, easing the body into sleep. This internal clock explains why you feel jet lag when it falls out of sync with the world. Circadian rhythms are ancient, shared across plants and animals, keeping life aligned with the planet's turning. In every breath and heartbeat, you are following the rhythm of a clock older than humanity itself. Jet lag is a battle between body and brain clocks. When you travel quickly across time zones, your brain's circadian clock and your body's rhythms fall out of alignment. The suprachiasmatic nucleus may say it is morning, while your digestive system still thinks it is midnight. This mismatch causes fatigue, digestive upset, and mood changes. Jet lag is essentially your body struggling to synchronize countless internal clocks, from liver cells to hormones to the new day-night cycle. Light is the strongest reset signal. Morning light in the new location nudges your brain's clock forward, while darkness helps it realign at night. Eventually, your entire system resynchronizes, but the process can take days. Jet lag reveals just how tightly the brain's timing governs the body. A single small cluster of neurons dictating harmony across trillions of cells. Until it resets, you feel like a traveler stuck between two worlds. Memory consolidation happens while you sleep. When you learn something new during the day, the memory is fragile, easily forgotten. But during sleep, especially in slow wave and REM stages, the brain replays and strengthens these traces. Neurons in the hippocampus, the seahorse-shaped memory hub, fire in patterns that mirror the day's experiences. These bursts are believed to rehearse the memory, transferring it into long-term storage in the cortex. This process is why sleep is essential for learning. Without it, memories remain brittle, prone to loss. With it, knowledge becomes woven into the brain's larger network. Sleep is thus both janitor and librarian, cleaning out waste while carefully shelving the stories of the day. Each night, your brain is busy writing the diary of your life. archiving experiences so they can be recalled tomorrow, or even decades later. Learning before bed can strengthen recall. Timing matters when it comes to memory. Studies show that material learned just before sleep is often recalled more strongly the next day. The reason is that the fragile memory traces are less likely to be disrupted by new information and more quickly enter the consolidation process during sleep. This is why reviewing vocabulary, practicing a piece of music, or studying notes before bed can yield surprising improvements by morning. The brain, already primed for its nightly work of replaying and strengthening connections, gives this new knowledge priority. It is as though the final whispers of the day are etched more deeply, protected by the silence of sleep that follows. Bedtime is not just an end. It can be a bridge, carrying the day's learning safely into tomorrow. Naps are like mini brain resets. Even short naps offer powerful benefits for the brain. A nap of just 20 minutes can boost alertness, sharpen attention, and improve mood. Longer naps that include slow-wave and REM stages can even enhance memory and problem-solving. During a nap, the brain begins many of the same processes as overnight sleep, clearing waste, consolidating fragments of memory, and restoring chemical balance. This is why a nap can feel like waking with a new mind, refreshed and sharpened. Cultures that embrace daytime rest often show better overall alertness and productivity. Far from laziness, napping is a natural part of the human brain's rhythm, a pause that resets the internal system. Like hitting refresh on a computer, a nap clears away clutter, allowing thought and focus to return with clarity. Your brain releases DMT naturally in tiny amounts. Dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, is a powerful psychedelic compound, often called the spirit molecule. While it is famous for its hallucinogenic effects when taken externally, the brain itself produces DMT naturally in trace amounts. It is found in the pineal gland, as well as in other brain regions and bodily tissues. Its precise role is still debated. Some scientists think it may help regulate mood, dreaming, or perception. Because of its profound effects when concentrated, some researchers speculate it may play a part in the vivid imagery of dreams or even in near-death experiences when floods of natural chemicals alter perception. Although much remains unknown, the discovery that the brain itself manufactures this potent compound blurs the line between natural brain chemistry and the altered states of consciousness that humans have sought for. Millennia. Psychedelics can temporarily dissolve the sense of self. When people take psychedelic substances like psilocybin or LSD, they often report a loss of ego, a dissolution of the sense of being a separate I. Neuroscience helps explain why. Brain imaging shows that psychedelics reduce activity in the default mode network, the system linked to self-reflection and inner narrative. With this network quieted, the boundaries between self and world can feel blurred. People describe merging with nature, with others, or with the universe itself. While disorienting, this temporary ego loss is often accompanied by feelings of awe, connection, or spiritual insight. Researchers are now studying these states for their therapeutic potential, finding that profound shifts in self-perception can sometimes ease depression, anxiety, or addiction. Psychedelics remind us that the sense of self, normally so solid, is a construct of the brain, one that can dissolve and reform in extraordinary ways. Synesthesia blends senses in unexpected ways. For people with synesthesia, the senses are not neatly separated. A sound might trigger a flash of color. A number might have a taste. A word might evoke a distinct texture. Neuroscientists believe synesthesia occurs when neighboring brain regions, say those handling sound and color, are unusually connected, causing signals to spill over. While relatively rare, synesthesia provides a vivid glimpse into the brain's wiring. For those who experience it, the world can feel layered with extra dimensions, each sound or shape clothed in additional sensation. Some artists and musicians credit synesthesia with inspiring their creativity, turning ordinary perception into multisensory art. The condition reminds us that perception is not fixed. It is built by neural connections. When those connections cross, the brain can weave a world richer and stranger than most of us can imagine. The brain can rewire to adapt to blindness or deafness. When someone loses a sense, the brain does not sit idle. It adapts. In blind individuals, the visual cortex often becomes active during tasks like reading Braille or even listening to speech, repurposed to handle touch or sound. In deaf individuals, regions normally devoted to hearing can become responsive to vision, enhancing visual awareness or motion detection. This rewiring, made possible by neuroplasticity, shows how flexible the brain is. Rather than letting unused areas waste away, it reallocates them, strengthening other senses. This is why many blind people often report heightened hearing or touch, and many deaf individuals show sharper visual perception. The brain is not hardwired. It is opportunistic, reshaping itself to make the most of whatever inputs are available. In this way, loss can spark transformation, proving that the brain is as adaptable as it is fragile. Phantom limb sensations arise from brain maps. When a limb is lost, many amputees continue to feel it, itching, tingling, or even pain in a body part no longer there. These phantom limb sensations arise from the brain's map of the body, located in the somatosensory cortex. This map does not vanish when the limb is gone. Instead, neurons representing the missing limb may become activated by nearby regions. For instance, touching the face of an amputee can sometimes trigger sensation in the phantom hand, because the facial and hand regions lie side by side on the cortical map. The persistence of phantom limbs reveals that the brain's model of the body is not updated instantly. The body you feel is not only flesh and bone, but also a neural construct, one that can linger long after the physical form has changed. Neuroprosthetics can turn thoughts into movement. Advances in neuroscience have allowed researchers to create devices that translate thought into action. By implanting electrodes in the motor cortex, scientists can record the patterns of activity that occur when someone imagines moving a limb. These signals can then be sent to a robotic arm, allowing paralyzed individuals to control it with their mind. Some neuroprosthetics bypass damaged spinal cords, directly stimulating muscles to restore movement. While still experimental, these technologies demonstrate the incredible potential of decoding the brain's electrical language. To think of reaching and see a robotic hand move in response is to watch thought made visible. Neuroprosthetics are more than machines. They are bridges between mind and body, offering glimpses of a future where the boundaries of flesh are no longer the limits of action. Brain-computer interfaces are beginning to decode intention. Beyond prosthetics, brain-computer interfaces (BCI) aim to link minds directly with machines. Electrodes placed on or inside the brain can pick up neural signals associated with intention, such as the thought of moving a cursor, selecting a letter, or even imagining speech. Algorithms translate these patterns into digital commands. Already, paralyzed patients have used BCIs to type messages, control wheelchairs, or move robotic limbs. Researchers hope to refine the technology for faster, more natural interaction. BCIs highlight the possibility of merging thought with digital systems, creating seamless links between brain and machine. Though in its infancy, this field suggests a future where communication may not always rely on hands, voice, or screen, but on the direct language of neurons themselves. artificial memories can be implanted in animals. In groundbreaking experiments, scientists have manipulated the hippocampus of mice to implant artificial memories. By pairing electrical stimulation of specific neurons with certain experiences, researchers caused mice to remember events that never occurred. The animals later behaved as if the memory were real, avoiding areas associated with a false shock or showing preference for a false reward. These studies demonstrate that memory is not a fixed recording, but a pattern of neural activity that can be created or altered. While still far from human application, the research raises profound questions about memory's reliability. If experiences can be fabricated at the cellular level, then memory is not only fragile but also malleable, a story written by the brain, and one that, in principle, can be rewritten. Electrical stimulation can trigger laughter or sadness. When neurosurgeons map the brain during surgery, they sometimes apply tiny electrical currents to specific regions. In certain spots, patients burst into laughter, even in the absence of humor. In others, they may feel sudden sadness or fear. These findings reveal how tightly emotions are tied to circuits, that joy, sorrow, or anxiety can be switched on like lights. This does not make emotions artificial. Rather, it shows that feelings are physical, grounded in networks that can be nudged into action. For patients with certain conditions, controlled stimulation may one day help rebalance mood. But it also offers a humbling perspective, what feels like the most personal part of life. Laughter, grief, awe can arise from sparks and circuits in the living tissue of the brain. Deep brain stimulation can treat depression and Parkinson's. Deep brain stimulation (DBs) is a medical technology that uses implanted electrodes to deliver electrical impulses directly into specific brain regions. Originally developed to reduce tremors in Parkinson's disease, DBS has restored movement to patients trapped by stiffness or shaking. More recently, it has been used to treat severe depression resistant to medication. By modulating activity in mood-related circuits, DBS can lift emotional paralysis and restore function. Though not without risks, this therapy demonstrates how precisely targeted stimulation can reshape neural activity and relieve suffering. It is a vivid example of the brain's electrical nature. Carefully tuned currents can quiet storms of misfiring neurons or awaken circuits that have fallen silent. In the gentle pulse of electricity, patients can regain movement, mood, and parts of life that once seemed lost. Alzheimer's erodes memory by attacking neurons. Alzheimer's disease is one of the most devastating conditions of the brain. It begins quietly, often with small lapses in memory, but slowly erodes the networks that store and retrieve experiences. At its core are plaques and tangles, abnormal protein buildups that disrupt communication between neurons and choke them from within. As neurons die, the hippocampus shrinks, robbing people of their ability to form new memories. Later, other regions falter, impairing language, reasoning, and recognition. Alzheimer's is not simple forgetting. It is the physical unraveling of brain tissue itself. Families often describe it as watching a loved one fade away piece by piece, their inner world collapsing as the scaffolding of memory gives way. Yet even in late stages, music, touch, or familiar voices can stir sparks of recognition, reminding us that fragments of self remain hidden deep within. New neurons are born even in adult brains. For much of history, scientists believed humans were born with all the neurons they would ever have. But modern discoveries proved otherwise. In certain brain regions, including the hippocampus, new neurons continue to form throughout adulthood in a process called neurogenesis. These newborn cells integrate into existing circuits, supporting learning and memory. Exercise, enriched environments, and even meditation have been shown to increase neurogenesis, while stress and aging can suppress it. This constant renewal suggests that the brain remains flexible, capable of refreshing itself with fresh cells even late in life. Though not all regions produce new neurons, the fact that any do at all overturns old dogma. The adult brain is not a finished sculpture, it is a living garden, sprouting new growth even as the years pass. The smell of fresh bread can trigger childhood memories. Of all the senses, smell is most deeply entwined with memory. The olfactory bulb, which processes scent, has direct connections to the hippocampus and amygdala, the brain's memory and emotion centers. This explains why a whiff of fresh bread, pine needles, or a certain perfume can instantly transport you decades into the past. Scientists call this the Proust effect, named after the French writer who described how the taste of a Madeleine cake unlocked vivid childhood recollections. Smell bypasses the thalamus, the brain's usual relay station, and links directly to memory circuits. That is why scent-triggered memories feel more emotional and immersive than others. A single aroma can open a door to a forgotten moment, as if the past lingers invisibly in the air, waiting to be breathed back into life. Long-term memories rely on protein synthesis. Forming a long-lasting memory is not just about neurons firing, it requires building new proteins. When a memory is stabilized or consolidated, neurons activate genes that create proteins to strengthen synapses. These proteins reinforce the connections between cells, ensuring the memory endures beyond minutes or hours. If protein synthesis is blocked, new memories can fade quickly, never anchoring into permanence. This molecular work explains why memories strengthen with repetition. Each rehearsal reactivates the circuits, prompting another round of protein building. Long-term memory is, quite literally, constructed from the stuff of the body. In this way, the stories of your life are not only written in sparks, but also etched in molecules, bound into the architecture of living tissue. Emotions make memories stick more strongly. Think back to your most vivid memories, and many are tied to strong feelings: joy, fear, sorrow, awe. This is no accident. The amygdala, the brain's emotional center, interacts closely with the hippocampus during memory formation. When emotions surge, stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol flood the brain, strengthening the encoding of details. This is why you may remember where you were during a moment of shock or triumph, but forget countless ordinary days. Emotional salience acts like glue, binding experience more firmly into memory. Yet it is a double-edged sword. Trauma can etch memories so deeply that they intrude, as in post-traumatic stress disorder. Emotion makes memory more than storage. It makes it story, charged with meaning and weight. Forgetting is an active process, not just decay. Forgetting may feel like memory fading into dust, but neuroscience reveals it is active, not passive. The brain deliberately prunes and suppresses memories, ensuring that only useful information remains. Neurons weaken or dismantle synaptic connections, clearing space for new learning. Specialized cells called microglia may help by physically removing unused synapses. Forgetting is essential. Without it, memory would become cluttered, overwhelmed by irrelevant details. Conditions like hypothymesia, where people remember nearly every day of their lives, can be as much a burden as a gift. Forgetting, paradoxically, is part of intelligence. It allows flexibility, prioritization, and adaptation. To forget is not to fail, it is to make room for the present to matter more than the past. False memories can be created with suggestion. Memory feels trustworthy, but it can be manipulated. Experiments show that with carefully worded questions or repeated suggestions, people can come to remember events that never happened. A researcher might imply a childhood trip to a hot air balloon, and later the participant recalls details of an outing that was entirely fictional. Brain scans reveal that false memories activate many of the same circuits as real ones, making them feel authentic. This fragility is why eyewitness testimony can be unreliable. Memory is not a photograph, but a reconstruction, vulnerable to outside influence. False memories demonstrate that our past is not fixed. Instead, it is a story, rewritten each time it is recalled, and sometimes revised by the voices of others. Nostalgia activates reward circuits in the brain. When you revisit an old song, a childhood place, or a photograph, you may feel a warm ache. Nostalgia. Neuroscience shows that nostalgia activates the brain's reward system, particularly the release of dopamine, as well as regions tied to memory and emotion. This blend of bittersweet feeling is partly why nostalgia is so powerful. It comforts while it mourns. In times of stress or uncertainty, nostalgia can stabilize identity, reminding you of who you have been and where you come from. It is not simply longing, but a neurochemical embrace, blending memory with reward. This may be why nostalgic experiences can ease loneliness and lift mood. Far from being mere sentiment, nostalgia is a biological response, stitching the past into the present with threads of feeling. Collective memory shapes culture and identity. Memory is not only personal. Shared experiences, wars, migrations, celebrations become embedded in collective memory, shaping entire cultures. Neuroscience shows that recalling such events engages not only memory regions but also social circuits, binding individuals together through narrative. Collective memory gives groups continuity, a sense of we that stretches across generations. It influences identity, politics, and even morality. Festivals, monuments, and rituals serve as external memory aids, reinforcing the brain's internal work. Just as neurons connect to form a network, people connect through shared stories, creating a social brain at the level of culture. Collective memory is the glue that binds communities, reminding us that memory is not only the story of a self, but the story of a people. Memory champions use visual palaces to store knowledge. Memory athletes who can recite thousands of digits or decks of cards use an ancient technique called the method of loci, or memory palace. They imagine a familiar building, a childhood home, a palace, a street, and place each piece of information at a location within it. By mentally walking through the space, they can recall each detail in order. Neuroscience shows that this method harnesses the brain's strong spatial memory, which evolved for navigation, but can be repurposed for abstract data. Brain scans reveal that memory champions activate regions associated with place and movement. By tying knowledge to imagined journeys, they turn memory into landscape. The technique demonstrates that the brain recalls best when information is woven into vivid spatial stories, a reminder that memory is not only storage, but also imagination in motion. The brain is about 75% water. Though it feels solid, the brain is mostly fluid, around 75% water. This high water content cushions neurons, keeps electrical signals flowing smoothly, and supports chemical balance. Water fills the cerebrospinal fluid that bathes the brain, protecting it from injury and washing away waste. Dehydration quickly affects mental clarity, showing how vital water is to thought itself. Even a small loss of fluid can slow reaction times, cloud memory, or spark headaches. The watery nature of the brain reminds us how delicate consciousness is, reliant not only on electricity and molecules, but also on something as simple and ancient as water. In a way, each thought you have is buoyed by liquid, each memory carried on invisible currents. To think is to flow, And to dream is to drift on tides within the skull. It produces enough electricity to power a small light bulb. Neurons communicate with sparks of electricity, and together, billions of these signals generate a surprising amount of energy. At any given moment, the human brain produces around 20 watts of electrical power, roughly enough to light a small bulb. This energy is not stored or directed like a battery, but constantly consumed in the orchestration of thought, sensation, and movement. The image is striking. Each idea, each flicker of awareness comes from a living current bright enough to glow. In this sense, your brain is both organ and lantern, a generator of light, not visible to the eye, but illuminating your inner world. The hum of electricity within your skull is what keeps reality stitched together. The glow of a bulb and the spark of a thought are, at their core, born from the same force. Information moves across neurons in milliseconds. The brain's speed is astonishing. When one neuron fires, the signal can travel across the synapse and trigger another cell in just a few thousandths of a second. Chains of neurons can pass information with such rapidity that you can react to a falling glass almost before you consciously register the sound. Reflexes are even faster, routed through the spinal cord to bypass delay. This near-instant communication explains why the world feels continuous, not lagging. Electrical pulses and chemical messengers ripple across billions of junctions at lightning speed, keeping thought and perception seamless. What seems like effortless flow is in fact a storm of millisecond sparks, billions of messages flickering so quickly that they blur into the smooth fabric of awareness. Your brain has no pain receptors of its own. Surprisingly, the brain itself cannot feel pain. Surgeons can operate on awake patients without the brain tissue registering any discomfort. The pounding ache of a headache comes not from the brain, but from blood vessels, muscles, or the membranes surrounding it. This insensitivity is why neurosurgeons can map brain regions during surgery, applying gentle stimulation while patients remain alert and responsive. It also explains why tumors or other problems inside the brain may grow unnoticed until they affect surrounding structures. Pain is one of the brain's creations, yet the organ that generates the sensation is itself immune to it. An odd paradox that highlights how the experience of pain belongs not to tissue, but to perception itself. Blood-brain barrier protects you from toxins. The brain is shielded by a remarkable defense system called the blood-brain barrier. Lining the blood vessels of the brain are tightly packed cells that act as sentries, allowing vital nutrients to pass through while blocking harmful substances. This barrier keeps out toxins, bacteria, and even many medications, preserving the brain's delicate chemistry. Yet it is selective, not absolute. Oxygen, glucose, and certain fat-soluble molecules cross freely, fueling the brain's ceaseless activity. Infections and poisons that breach the barrier are rare but often severe, showing how critical the defense is. Scientists are now studying ways to carefully bypass the barrier to deliver treatments for diseases like Alzheimer's or brain cancer. The blood-brain barrier is a silent guardian, patrolling the border of mind and body, deciding what may enter the sanctuary of thought. Caffeine blocks receptors to keep you awake. The alertness you feel after coffee or tea comes from a simple trick of chemistry. As you stay awake, your brain produces adenosine, a molecule that builds sleep pressure by binding to receptors and slowing activity. Caffeine closely resembles adenosine and slips into those receptors, blocking them without activating them. The result is that the brain no longer registers how tired it is, and wakefulness feels extended. Eventually, though, adenosine builds up behind the blockade, which is why the crash after caffeine can be sharp. Caffeine doesn't create energy, it delays the brain's recognition of fatigue. This borrowed alertness is why caffeine has become humanity's most widely used psychoactive substance, a daily negotiation with the brain's natural chemistry of rest. Dopamine drives motivation, not just pleasure. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but its true role is more subtle. Rather than producing pleasure directly, dopamine drives motivation and learning. It is released in anticipation of reward, pushing you to act, to seek, to persist. When you see food while hungry or a goal within reach, dopamine surges, energizing behavior. It reinforces habits, teaching the brain which actions lead to outcomes worth repeating. This is why dopamine is central not only to joy but also to addiction. The system can be hijacked by drugs that flood it artificially, teaching the brain to crave without end. More than a source of pleasure, dopamine is the fuel of striving, the spark that keeps you reaching for the next moment of fulfillment. Serotonin influences mood, sleep, and digestion. Serotonin is one of the brain's most versatile messengers. It regulates mood, helping to stabilize feelings of well-being. It influences sleep, guiding transitions between wakefulness and rest. It also affects appetite and even digestion, with most of the body's serotonin actually produced in the gut. Low levels are linked to depression, which is why many antidepressant medications aim to increase serotonin availability in the brain. But serotonin is not simply the happiness chemical. It is a regulator, a conductor balancing many systems at once. It calms, stabilizes, and harmonizes, ensuring that emotions, rhythms, and bodily functions stay aligned. Serotonin is less about sparks of joy than about the steady hum of balance, the background tone that keeps the music of the mind in tune. Oxytocin strengthens social bonds. Nicknamed the love hormone, oxytocin plays a crucial role in trust, bonding, and social connection. It is released during childbirth, breastfeeding, and physical affection, strengthening ties between parent and child, partners, and friends. Oxytocin lowers stress responses, making people feel safer in groups and more inclined to cooperate. Experiments show that when oxytocin rises, trust in strangers increases and generosity grows. Yet it is not purely gentle. In some cases, oxytocin can also strengthen in-group loyalty, sharpening divisions between us and them. At its core, though, it is the neurochemical glue that binds humans together, weaving relationships and communities. Every hug, every shared smile, carries with it a pulse of oxytocin, the brain's way of turning fleeting contact into enduring connection. Endorphins are your brain's natural opioids. When you run long distances, laugh deeply, or even eat spicy food, your brain releases endorphins. These molecules resemble morphine, binding to the same receptors to dull pain and create mild euphoria. They evolved to help humans push through hardship, a runner escaping danger, a mother giving birth, a hunter enduring injury. Endorphins explain the runner's high, the bliss that sometimes follows prolonged exertion. They also surge during laughter, singing, and ritual, helping to knit groups together. Unlike external opioids, endorphins are finely tuned, produced in just the right amounts for the situation. They are the brain's own pharmacy, soothing pain and sparking joy when needed most. In every burst of endurance or shared laugh, your brain is quietly dosing you with its natural balm. The teenage brain is wired for risk-taking. Adolescence is a time of bold choices and daring impulses, and neuroscience helps explain why. During the teenage years, the brain's reward system, driven by dopamine, becomes especially sensitive. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which governs long-term planning and self-control, is still maturing. This imbalance creates a brain primed for exploration, novelty, and risk. While it can lead to reckless behavior, it also drives creativity, resilience, and learning. Risk-taking helps teenagers step beyond the safe boundaries of childhood and carve out their own identities. The very wiring that leads to impulsivity also fuels innovation, courage, and social connection. In this way, the teenage brain is not flawed but beautifully adapted for transition, propelling young minds toward adulthood through a mix of daring and discovery. Children's brains form connections at incredible speed. In early childhood, the brain is a construction site in overdrive. Millions of new synapses are formed every second as neurons reach out, connect, and build networks. By age 2, a child's brain has twice as many synapses as an adult's, a vast overgrowth designed to capture every possible experience. This abundance allows children to absorb language, music, and culture with breathtaking ease. Over time, pruning occurs, removing unused connections and strengthening the ones that remain. Childhood is thus both abundance and refinement, a period where the brain throws open every door, then carefully closes the ones not needed. The speed of connection building explains why early experiences are so formative. The young brain is not only growing but sculpting itself with every interaction, touch, and word. Early childhood experiences shape brain development. The architecture of the brain is profoundly influenced by early experiences. Nurturing, responsive care floods the developing brain with positive signals, reinforcing circuits for security and resilience. Conversely, neglect or chronic stress can alter pathways, heightening sensitivity to fear or reducing capacity for learning. During the first years of life, the brain's plasticity is at its peak, making it exquisitely responsive to the environment. This is why enriching surroundings, conversation, play, affection fosters strong cognitive and emotional growth. Neuroscience shows that childhood is not only about genes, but about interaction. Every hug, every lullaby, every moment of safety becomes woven into the structure of the brain itself. In this way, early experiences are not fleeting. They are carved into the foundation of the self, shaping how the mind will meet the world. Language learning is easiest before puberty. Children seem to soak up languages effortlessly, while adults often struggle. The reason lies in brain plasticity. Before puberty, the brain's language circuits are highly flexible, able to form new patterns with little effort. After adolescence, those circuits become more specialized, making new languages harder to master, though not impossible. This critical period explains why young children raised in bilingual homes can speak both languages with native fluency, while older learners often retain an accent. Yet adult learners benefit from stronger cognitive strategies and persistence, which can compensate for reduced plasticity. The brain's timing shapes the path of language, but the drive to communicate endures at every age. In children, language flows like water into ready channels in adults. It must be carved with care, but it still runs deep. Bilingual brains may resist dementia longer. Speaking more than one language does more than broaden communication. It seems to protect the brain against decline. Studies show that bilingual individuals often experience the onset of dementia years later than monolinguals. Constantly switching between languages strengthens executive functions, the mental skills of attention, control, and flexibility. This mental workout builds what scientists call cognitive reserve, extra resilience in the brain's networks. Even as disease begins to damage certain pathways, the bilingual brain has alternative routes to fall back on. In essence, juggling languages keeps the brain agile, building hidden strength for the years ahead. The simple act of navigating two vocabularies and grammars becomes a kind of lifelong training, shielding the mind against the erosion of memory and thought. Music training sharpens auditory pathways. Learning to play an instrument transforms the brain. Musicians show stronger connections in auditory regions, improved timing, and heightened sensitivity to pitch. Even a few years of music lessons in childhood can sharpen language skills and attention. Brain scans reveal that music training strengthens the corpus callosum, the bridge between hemispheres, improving coordination across regions. The act of translating notes on a page into movements of the hands and sounds in the air exercises motor, auditory, and visual circuits simultaneously. This broad engagement builds a brain that listens more keenly, learns more quickly, and adapts more easily. Music does not only create beauty, it forges new pathways, tuning the brain itself like an instrument, each practice session a quiet act of rewiring. Reading rewires the visual cortex. The human brain did not evolve specifically to read. Writing is a recent invention. Yet when we learn to read, the brain adapts by repurposing circuits in the visual cortex. Shapes and lines that once meant nothing become letters, and letters become words. Over time, this rewiring creates the visual word form area, a specialized region that recognizes written language instantly. Reading also strengthens connections between vision, language, and memory, weaving together multiple regions into a seamless process. In literate brains, even silent reading activates auditory areas, as if hearing the words in the mind's ear. Reading is not a natural skill, it is a cultural achievement that reshapes the brain's architecture. Each book leaves an imprint, not just on thought, but on the very wiring of the cortex. Video games can enhance spatial awareness. Though often criticized, video games can train the brain in surprising ways. Games that require navigating complex environments or reacting quickly to visual cues improve spatial awareness and hand-eye coordination. Studies show that gamers develop stronger connections in regions linked to attention and visual processing. They can track multiple objects more easily, switch tasks faster, and maintain focus under distraction. Certain games even enhance the hippocampus, the brain's mapmaker, by challenging players to remember and explore virtual landscapes. Of course, balance matters. Too much play can create problems. But in moderation, video games demonstrate how interactive experiences can sharpen cognitive skills, showing once again the brain's remarkable ability to adapt to new worlds, even digital ones. Chronic stress can shrink the hippocampus. Stress, when brief, sharpens the brain's focus and response. But when stress becomes chronic, it floods the brain with cortisol, a hormone that damages neurons over time. The hippocampus, crucial for memory and learning, is particularly vulnerable. Long-term stress can reduce its size, impairing memory and making new learning harder. This explains why people under constant strain often feel forgetful or mentally foggy. Yet the brain is resilient. Reducing stress through rest, exercise, or meditation can reverse some of the damage, allowing the hippocampus to regrow connections. Stress leaves real marks on the brain, but those marks are not permanent. Like a landscape recovering after a storm, the hippocampus can heal when calmer conditions return. Exercise boosts neurogenesis and mood. Physical activity benefits not only the body, but the brain. Exercise increases blood flow, delivering oxygen and nutrients, while also stimulating the release of growth factors that encourage neurogenesis in the hippocampus. These new neurons support memory, learning, and resilience against decline. Exercise also triggers endorphins and modulates neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, lifting mood and reducing anxiety. Even moderate activity, such as walking, can significantly improve mental clarity and emotional balance. The moving body refreshes the mind, strengthening both structure and chemistry. In every step, in every heartbeat elevated by motion, the brain receives signals of renewal. Exercise, in its simplest form, is a dialogue between body and mind, a reminder that movement is medicine not just for muscles but for thought itself. Meditation can reshape brain structure. Long-term meditation is more than a calming practice. It physically reshapes the brain. Brain scans reveal that regular meditation increases grey matter density in areas linked to attention, learning, and emotional regulation. Regions such as the hippocampus grow stronger, while the amygdala, central to fear and stress, can shrink. Even short-term practice has measurable effects, thickening connections and enhancing focus. Meditation doesn't only still the mind in the moment it leaves traces in tissue, carving new pathways of calm and resilience. This is neuroplasticity at work, the mind changing the brain through practice. Each breath, each moment of quiet focus becomes a sculptor's tool, etching peace into the folds of the cortex. Mindfulness thickens the prefrontal cortex. Mindfulness, the practice of bringing attention gently to the present, has been shown to thicken the prefrontal cortex, the brain's hub of planning, self-control, and decision-making. In studies, people who practiced mindfulness regularly showed more robust connections in this region, counteracting some of the natural thinning that occurs with age. This may explain why mindfulness enhances emotional regulation, making it easier to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Strengthening the prefrontal cortex also improves focus and working memory, giving the mind greater clarity. Each mindful moment, a breath observed, a thought gently released, strengthens the very fabric of awareness. With time, mindfulness becomes not just a state of mind, but a physical transformation of the brain itself, a quiet thickening of control and calm. Placebo effects show the power of belief. The placebo effect demonstrates that belief alone can alter brain function. When someone expects relief from a pill, even if it contains no active drug, the brain often responds by releasing its own painkillers, like endorphins. Brain scans show changes in activity in regions tied to emotion and expectation. The effect extends beyond pain. Placebos can improve mood, ease anxiety, and even affect symptoms of Parkinson's disease by boosting dopamine release. The placebo effect is not imaginary. It is the brain mobilizing its own resources, triggered by belief. This reveals a profound truth. Perception and expectation can shape biology. In many ways, the mind is both patient and healer, reminding us that the boundaries between thought and body are softer than they seem. Hypnosis alters brain connectivity. Hypnosis has long been shrouded in mystery, but neuroscience shows it brings real changes to brain activity. Under hypnosis, the brain's default mode network, responsible for self-reflection, shows reduced activity, while regions linked to focus and imagination become more synchronized. This shift allows suggestions to feel more vivid and real, as if bypassing the usual filters of skepticism. Hypnosis can alter perception of pain, ease anxiety, and even change how memories are recalled. Far from a loss of control, hypnosis is a state of heightened focus and receptivity. Brain scans show that during hypnosis, circuits of attention and imagery intertwine, creating a fertile ground where suggestion becomes experience. The hypnotized brain reveals how flexible reality can be when attention is deeply directed inward. Psychedelics temporarily dissolve the brain's default network. Substances like psilocybin and LSD don't simply create hallucinations, they profoundly alter brain connectivity. One of their key effects is reducing activity in the default mode network, the set of regions that maintains the sense of self. As this network quiets, communication between previously separate brain regions increases, creating new patterns of connectivity. The result is a flood of associations, vivid imagery, and often a sense of ego dissolution, the feeling of merging with the world. Neuroscientists see this as both disruption and opportunity, a window into how flexible consciousness can be. Psychedelics temporarily dissolve the boundaries of ordinary thought, revealing a brain unbound, networks cross-talking in ways rarely seen. The mind becomes a kaleidoscope of possibilities, a glimpse of consciousness unmoored from its usual anchor. Consciousness may arise from brain-wide integration. One leading theory of consciousness suggests it emerges not from a single brain region, but from the integration of information across the entire brain. According to this view, called integrated information theory, consciousness is what it feels like when information is unified into a whole. Neurons firing in separate regions, vision, sound, memory, become stitched together into one seamless experience. Without integration, sensations would remain fragments, like unassembled puzzle pieces. Consciousness may thus be the brain's ability to bind diversity into unity, to create a single flowing stream of awareness. While the mystery is far from solved, this theory suggests that consciousness is not located in one place, but in the harmony of many, a chorus of signals blended into the singular voice of experience. Free will might be shaped by unconscious processes. Experiments in neuroscience reveal that decisions can be detected in brain activity before a person becomes aware of making them. This has led some scientists to question free will, suggesting that unconscious processes drive choices before conscious intention appears. Brain scans show patterns that predict simple decisions seconds before awareness. Yet others argue that consciousness still plays a vital role, influencing, vetoing, or reshaping impulses once they rise into awareness. Free will, in this light, may not be absolute command but a negotiation, a conversation between unconscious preparation and conscious choice. Rather than diminishing the self, this perspective highlights the layered nature of decision-making, where thought emerges from depths below awareness only to be refined by the conscious mind. The brain creates a stable self out of constant change. Neurons are constantly rewiring, signals are in flux, and cells die and regenerate. Yet through all this change, the brain constructs a sense of continuous self. Memory, identity, and personality are woven from shifting activity into the illusion of stability. The self is not fixed, but reassembled moment by moment, a story the brain tells itself with remarkable consistency. Even as the physical matter of the brain changes over years, the continuity of memory and narrative creates the feeling of being the same person. In this sense, the self is less a thing and more a process, a stream weaving change into sameness. It is the brain's greatest illusion and its most necessary truth, the anchor that keeps experience coherent in a sea of flux. Artificial intelligence is modeled after neural networks. Modern artificial intelligence draws inspiration from the brain's structure. Neural networks in computing mimic the way neurons connect, activating in layers to recognize patterns. Though vastly simpler than the human brain, these systems can learn to recognize faces, translate languages, or generate art. Each artificial neuron strengthens or weakens its connections based on feedback, echoing synaptic plasticity. Yet even the largest AI models remain primitive compared to the 86 billion neurons of the human brain. Still, the parallel reminds us that intelligence, biological or artificial, emerges from networks, from patterns of connection, rather than single points of control. In building machines that echo our neurons, we are exploring not only technology but reflections of ourselves, small mirrors of the deeper mysteries of mind. The brain is the most complex structure in the known universe. 86 billion neurons, each making thousands of connections, form a network of unimaginable scale. Trillions of synapses flash with electrical sparks, weaving perception, memory, language, and consciousness. No star system, no galaxy cluster yet studied rivals this intricacy. The human brain is the universe's most elaborate experiment in order and complexity. Within its folds lies the power to imagine galaxies, compose symphonies, and wonder about itself. It is both object and observer, both question and answer. Among all the wonders science has uncovered, the brain remains the most astonishing, a cosmos of cells that somehow knows it exists. To hold such vastness within a few pounds of tissue is perhaps the greatest miracle we know. And so we come to the end of tonight's journey, a journey not across galaxies or oceans, but inward, into the most intricate landscape we know. We have wandered through the quiet forests of neurons, along the rivers of memory, and into the shifting skies of thought and dream. We have seen how experience reshapes the brain, how belief can summon healing, and how the self is a story told in sparks of light. Your brain is at once ordinary and miraculous. It weighs only a few pounds, yet it carries every song you've ever loved, every face you've ever known, every hope you've ever held. It is the reason you can imagine the universe, and the reason you can feel at home beneath the night sky. To look inward is to glimpse something as vast as looking outward. If you enjoyed drifting through these quiet wonders, consider liking and subscribing, or leaving a thought in the comments below. It helps others find their way here too, one curious, sleepy mind at a time. But for now, there is nothing you need to do. Let the day fall gently behind you. Let your thoughts settle like leaves on still water. With every breath, allow yourself to soften, knowing the very organ that carries you through waking life is also carrying you now into rest. The neurons will keep on humming. The circuits will keep weaving their delicate songs, even as you drift away. You can let go of thought, let go of effort, and trust the quiet machinery of the brain to keep you safe until morning. Sleep is not absence, it is a gift your brain gives itself. A time of cleansing, of healing, of quiet repair. So let it take you now, slowly, softly, into the deep. Good night, dear listener, and may your dreams tonight be gentle and your rest complete. Until the next video, I'll be here, waiting to wander with you once more.